Spotlight is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It seeks to spotlight people, places, and events from around the Diocese of Youngstown that promote the new gospel of joy called for by Pope Francis. Your program host is Father James Corda.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Spotlight. I'm Father Jim Corda. Today we're going to talk about the Bella Women's Center. And joining me in our talk is Tia Ciferno and Julie Silker. And it's a pleasure to have you both on the show today.
Great to be here.
And I had a wonderful opportunity a couple weeks ago to visit the center. And I was, first of all, very blessed by my experience there. But second of all, just amazed at the wonderful things you're doing in Howland for the women who come to you in their particular need. Before we really get into talking about some of them and some of the ministry you provide, let's give a little history of the center itself.
It started back in 1991 by a community that was really concerned about the abortion rates in Trumbull County and didn't know what to do about that. What's our answer to that? And back then it was the model of housing. So most of them were teenagers, and maybe they told their parents that they were pregnant, and parents were like, well, your only answer is abortion. We're going to take you to a clinic. And this young girl said, that's not what I want or I believe in. Maybe left her with no place to stay. So maternity homes are a common model. Most of your listeners probably have heard of maternity homes. So New Life Maternity Home was what it was birthed at in 91. So, but in the mid-2000s, the numbers went down, and the board realized in the community that we needed something a little more relevant to reach a woman right at that point of need, right when she gets a positive pregnancy test. How do we address the need right then? So that's the conversion to a resource center, which was material goods and help and parenting classes and more of that support. But they always had the intention, and it happened about a year later, or a couple years later, to convert it to a medical clinic. And we'll be able to explain a little more about what that is now.
Yeah. We'll talk about that, but there's certain principles that guide and direct what you do.
Yes.
This is not just something that's out of a textbook, but it's something that comes from something deeper.
Yes.
And let's talk about that, and why is it so important for you personally to be involved in this, what I would call God's mission and God's work.
Wow, that's good. God's mission and God's work. We feel that every day. We feel his heartbeat for the women that he loves, and of course the unborn that are so precious to him. So what do you think, Julie? What about your call to this? It's exciting.
It is exciting. I think it's most important to know that there's so much joy in being able to serve. So being able to serve women in crisis when they're so confused and so uncertain of what and where they're at in the midst of a circumstance. So being able to meet them right at that point, just for the love of another soul, the love of another human being that is desperate for some help.
We like the term Christ in the crisis.
Yes.
And it seems like the maternity home was a model of that. And then the next step, and now in what we're doing now, it's where is Christ in the midst of this crisis? And so our heartbeat is respect, honor to her. There's a beauty and excellence that you saw at Bella, that when she comes, she realizes there's no cost to how we're serving because of the community coming together. And I think she's amazed when she walks in, and there's that kind of beauty to this place. Most of the time when something's no cost, people think that it's not going to be very nice.
Or have a quality to it.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I was amazed at my entrance there, walking into the facility. First of all, it's very deceiving because you look at this rather small facade, and then you enter this rather big expanse, and we'll talk about some of what goes on inside. But you're greeted by someone who, first of all, has a very warm and endearing personality, which I think is so crucial because many of the people who probably come very fearful and questioning, is this the right thing for me to do? And am I doing the right thing, or maybe I should just run from here and do something that I might have thought about doing prior to entering the doors of this facility.
Yes, it's a safe place. It's like an ark. The Lord kind of told us that in the beginning, didn't He?
Yes, He
He
did.
said that this would be an ark. And we feel that it's an ark of rescue for women and the babies that are at risk. So He brings them in, and then He told us they come in 2 by 2. So when she comes in the door, she's actually bringing someone with her.
That's right.
Sure. Well, you know, isn't that something that we oftentimes forget? Because we believe that what she is carrying inside her is alive. And so there is another life.
Yes.
You know, and so oftentimes that other life in our society doesn't have a name or a right. But indeed they do. In our faith, that's certainly what we celebrate.
Yes.
That presence of God within the woman during this very
yes.
special time in their life. You know, what are some of the other goals and objectives that you have at the facility that you instill in the women that come to you?
We're wanting her to appreciate the value that she has before the Lord, because many of them they've felt very alone. Maybe in their circle, they've never heard how precious they are to God. So we want to impart that to her. And they leave with that knowledge. And also, of course, the value of the child they carry, building stronger families and a future for her. But we also want to erase abortion in our community by providing other answers. And most of these women don't know that there are other answers or other help. 80% said of women who have had abortions said, I would never have made that choice if I hadn't felt so alone. And with a community vibrant like this, Body of Christ, none of these women should feel alone.
Sure. Yeah, we have about 2 minutes left of our first segment together, and I think that's really crucial to understand the woman that comes to you, because unless you know that, you don't know what you're dealing with. You know?
Exactly.
And I would imagine they come from different backgrounds, different feelings, different emotions. So while you have a guiding principle that directs what you share with them, you still have to meet them on their own turf.
That's right.
Yes.
You know? And how important is that to meet them personally, one-on-one?
That's very important. One of the things that we are very aware of is making sure that she has dignity and respect, because we don't know what the layers are underneath her circumstances. We do get to find a lot of that out as we build relationship with her. But first and foremost, just helping her to know that there's value to who she is, like Tia had said, but helping her to know that there's dignity in this crisis still, and meeting her, but being able to carry her along in the process. So.
They describe it when we're in a crisis like a snow globe that you shake up. You know, all of us have felt that, and you can't see what's next, but we're helping her at Bella settle, calm down, and then everything settles. You can see clearly what's inside. So
It's her safe place to land.
It is.
It's a very safe place.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, and during the break, the folks that are with us can watch a wonderful clip highlighting someone who has been served
Yes.
by the community and by the center. So we're going to take a quick break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
When I made that first initial call, it was to abort. It really, truly was, because I wasn't ready for this. And that was the first thing to come to my mind, is this can't be happening to my daughter, and I won't let this happen to my daughter. Abortion isn't going to be a pretty thing, and when I was considering it for my daughter, I didn't take the long-term effect into consideration at all. For her, for myself, or my family. I didn't even take God into consideration, that long-term effect. All I wanted was the solution, the quick fix. That's all I wanted. I believe after we did the ultrasound, that changed our perspective completely. The thought that we could see the baby move and that everything was there. You could see her heart beating. And then it brought the awareness to my daughter that there was actually a living person there.
I couldn't imagine my life without Isabella. She's my world. You guys gave me confidence knowing that it was still okay and I could move on with my future and still do what I want. It's just going to be a little bit of a harder task, but I always know I'm gonna have the support, even if it's from my family or here, I always have somebody.
She's brought so much joy to our life, it's unbelievable. The smiles, the giggles, it would never be the same.
Welcome back to Spotlight. We're talking about the Bella Women's Center in Holland, and with me is Julie and Tia. And I'd like to, hopefully you saw that clip right before you came back to our show. I'd like to have Julie talk a little bit about some of the people that come to the center, in particular the woman that shared this very emotional meeting and decision with you. So please share that with us.
That is a beautiful clip, and that's Deanna and Kerrigan. And part of the way that women find us is through our helpline. So not only do we see women all the way from 14 years old into their 40s, and even different socioeconomic realms, those are the types of women that find us. And when they do find us, they call us. We have a helpline that's answered pretty much all day into the evening. And when they contact us, most of them are in that panic shock state where they just found out that they got a positive on a pregnancy. So like Tia had mentioned, we want to be Christ in the midst of that crisis for them. So they need to understand some very important information though, and these are the things that they're not thinking about. And the things that they need to know are very important, like first and foremost, is she even really pregnant? A woman can get a positive on her pregnancy test, but that does not necessarily mean that she has a viable pregnancy. So we'll let them know, we'll run a urine pregnancy test, and if it comes up positive, we get to offer them an ultrasound at the same time of their appointment. That ultrasound helps to determine whether or not the pregnancy is considered viable. And we can determine that pretty early on in a pregnancy. It's 5 weeks and 1 day. That's pretty early. And if we can still determine that there's viability, we'll date that pregnancy for her so she knows exactly how far along she is in order to know where she's at in this process and meeting her again right where she's at. So not only knowing if she's definitely pregnant, but how far along she is very important. And then we also let her know on the phone that we can offer her some sexually transmitted infection testing. And that's just as important in her circumstance because we want her to be aware of the fact that if she goes into a termination procedure with an active or untreated STI, 25% of those patients contract pelvic inflammatory disease. So we want to protect her reproductive organs for potentially future pregnancies. So remember, just like Tia used with the snow globe, everything's swirling for her. She's not even sure what to think. And we have some answers that we can help her with so that that safe place is a medical, professional, and a controlled environment in the midst of that chaos that she's experiencing. So.
Well, what it is actually is kind of a holistic approach to the whole situation, because when they come, you're right, they're all over the place. They really don't know where to focus or where to see of what's a priority in their life. But when they enter the doors, there's almost this like total welcome that you cover everything for them. And you probably do it, I'm sure, in a very calm and caring way, which I think oftentimes they need at that moment in their life. Because maybe they may have shared with one other person, if not anybody, before they come. So they're all over the place.
That's true.
And I think the other thing is that there's a particular issue that that's beating right here at the center, and that's the pro-life issue. You're promoting and encouraging women to take the life that's within them and to give that to God, and in a very beautiful way and a very long-term way as well. You know, what about some of the other clients that come to you? Any stories that you might have that touched you? I'm sure there's probably many, but anything that stands out that you'd like to share with us to give the folks that are with us a glimpse, deeper understanding of some of the people?
Well, Julie answers our helpline, and she shares it occasionally, but we mainly use Julie because of her. Even on the way here while we drove, we use a cell phone so that we can answer that phone whenever. Nobody likes getting a machine, and we want a real person to be encountering her in the crisis. So even driving here, she answered a helpline, and I heard the love on the phone and that woman calming down. She told her just take a deep breath and get her on the schedule, because we're a medical clinic under a physician, and these centers are cropping. God is doing this all over the country and even all over the world. It's a pro-life movement in a practical, feet on the ground way to reach her. But I want her to tell a story because she's the one that encounters the patients with other advocates on site. So what do you think?
We have so many stories.
I know.
I wouldn't know which one to share.
How many hours long is this show?
Yes.
Just a half.
But so many of the stories, the principles are the same. The principles of, like you had stated, serving them holistically, which is not only serving them with the very real medical information that they need to know. And we do have advocates that meet them at the door, like you said, and walk all the way through their appointment with them. And part of that kindness helps them in the midst of this crisis to know someone's walking alongside of them, like she said, with the 80%. And then we also have that medical staff that's there to provide. We have professional registered nurses who will run tests and answer questions. So sometimes they get bits and pieces of this appointment that are so powerful and life transforming. And then we also have RDMSs on. Well, we have right now one RDMS on staff, and she's phenomenal. She's so gifted, but professionally being able to give this woman that expertise. So because we have that controlled environment, it helps that crisis story, that crisis situation feel like there's some stability, there's some grounding. And I'm thinking of one story in particular where another mother came in with a younger patient. And this patient and the mom, neither of them knew the education and information that was really involved in the midst of the physical realm, as well as the choice that they were going to make, what some of those side effects might have been. So when you see not only a woman understand that she transforms from a crisis into a joy in the midst of the circumstance, it not only affects the patient, but it can affect a whole family. It can affect. So when I think of a story, I think so many of them have the same threaded elements through the service that we provide, which ultimately brings joy in the midst of something that started off as such a
They looked at it
shock.
as an interruption in their road of life, and it turned out to be the greatest joy, as you saw in the video, of their life.
Well, it's interesting how we've got about a minute left in our second segment. It's so interesting that people in the 21st century would see human life as an interruption.
Yes.
And how unaware we are at times of the beauty and preciousness of human life from all stages. When I was at the facility, there was a young girl had come, and she had her young baby with her, who was probably 8 or 9 months old. And you had mentioned to me that she was one of a client that had come, and if she did not do this or choose to keep her baby, that beautiful baby would not be there.
Here.
And she did walk in our door with a total intention of not
Carrying
that pregnancy to term.
So when we see that,
yeah, so when they come on the back end and bring these beautiful babies in, and
There's a lot of
the
tears.
joy of their motherhood experience is, it's powerful. It's very powerful.
We can't believe we have the honor of doing this.
And it gives you the affirmation and support that you're doing the right thing.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the important thing.
Without trying to tell them what to do in the circumstance. We're not there to ever tell a woman what to do.
But truth speaks.
Truth, we allow the truth and the education and information to speak for itself.
We're going to take another quick break and show them the clip again.
Great.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When I made that first initial call, it was to abort. It really, truly was, because I wasn't ready for this. And that was the first thing to come to my mind, is this can't be happening to my daughter, and I won't let this happen to my daughter. Abortion isn't going to be a pretty thing, and when I was considering it for my daughter, I didn't take the long-term effect into consideration at all. For her, for myself, or my family. I didn't even take God into consideration, that long-term effect. All I wanted was the solution, the quick fix. That's all I wanted. I believe after we did the ultrasound, that changed our perspective completely. The thought that we could see the baby move and that everything was there. You could see her heart beating. And then it brought the awareness to my daughter that there was actually a living person there.
I couldn't imagine my life without Isabella. She's my world. You guys gave me confidence knowing that it was still okay and I could move on with my future and still do what I want. It's just going to be a little bit of a harder task, but I always know I'm going to have the support, even if it's from my family or here. I always have somebody.
She's brought so much joy to our life. It's unbelievable. The smiles, the giggles, it would never be the same.
Welcome back to our show. We're talking about the Bella Women's Center in Holland with Tia Ciferno and Julie Silker. I think what I'd like us to talk about briefly is the community support, because without that support, you probably couldn't continue to do the wonderful work that you're doing, because it is expensive, obviously,
Yes.
but we do need community support to join in the mission of it all as well. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's exciting. We have seen our community respond to this medical model. Everybody knows the pro-life effort that would be the picketing or the legal side, but while we're waiting for laws to change, women look at this because it's legal, that it's something moral and as it's an option. But the community's always been frustrated. I know I was thinking, what can we do to change this? So we've seen our own community, and I know across the country, centers like this have seen this response that, oh my goodness, there is something that works. This is something that women need, these tests. They're essential. She really needs to have them. And that when they come and receive it, they are experiencing the joy of that life on the ultrasound. They're getting the love of Christ. They're realizing their value. And hearts are changed and lives are changed. So I think the people in the community that donate to these centers see God at work. And what we see is that they realize if God can be in the midst of that crisis, He can be in the midst of our crisis.
Well, that's interesting that you point that out, because oftentimes we turn to God only in our crisis.
Yes.
And yet that's okay, because that's when we need Him most. But wouldn't it be wonderful to turn to Him even
Every
in
moment.
the joy and
Yes.
all the time?
Yes, all of it.
There is a phrase you used prior to our last segment here, surrendered the secret. What exactly is that all about? Can you share that with the folks?
Yeah, when we go to share Bella, we realize, or anybody is sharing this message, you realize that there are those listening, even in the pews. 1 out of 4, at least, women in our community have experienced abortion themselves. Loving, caring women. They didn't have the information. They were coerced. 65% of women are coerced into abortion. It's not a free choice. So we want her to have the right and the privilege of truth and love. But these are women now who have had it in their past. 40 years of this legalized. And even women who experienced it before it was legal, through physicians' offices that would do it. So we encounter them when we're out talking about Bella. So we have a beautiful Bible study. It's called Surrendering the Secret. It's 8 weeks long. 48 women have gone through that, a healing, a deep recovery in knowing that God values them, that the cross is there to forgive them, and they start over with a fresh new life. Some of them go on to serve in some of these centers to be voices again for the voiceless. So we love that side of it. It's very needed.
It's really important to do that, because I know in my experience, and I think I shared when I was visiting, that we as priests come in contact with many women who have had an abortion, who cannot forgive themselves, who cannot move beyond the action that happened, many of them years and years ago. And so there's a sense that in order for them to appreciate life in all its wonder, you have to move on.
right,
You have to forgive, and you have to let go and let God enter your broken heart, which basically is what they're experiencing.
Yes.
There's a loss, and you could talk more profoundly about that as women, that there's this when this life is growing within you, there's something, there's God present
Yes.
beyond just the little spark that we believe is our soul that's there.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
and I'm sure that you share that with the women that come to you, and oftentimes maybe that's the first time they've heard that.
That's right.
So true.
That's so very true.
And it's amazing how a woman will call, Julie will encounter her on helpline, schedule her. She's wanting an abortion. We say, we don't provide that. Here are the tests we provide. She says, well, that makes sense. It's no cost, no government funding, all donor. They'll come in, maybe see fetal demise, see that there's no heartbeat, and weep on the table. Because deep down, you're right. She had that maternal protective instinct in her.
What God
so-
created her to do.
Yes.
Sure.
is to carry.
Yeah.
But we know that these women are damaged and in bondage, and we want them to experience the freedom that Christ wants them to experience in the midst of
It's a huge part of what we do. I
Yeah.
love it.
The other thing is there's follow-up that you do too.
Yes.
And how important is the follow-up? You don't just treat the problem and send them on their
Exactly.
way, but there's
right.
you have to do that. What's involved and how important is that?
That is, we enjoy that part
That
of it
is
so
so
much
fun.
because we build bridges and we're building relationships with these women. We track with them all the way through, if they choose life, all the way up through to delivery, and then we get to have, like you saw on the film, that child was named after Bella Women's Center. They incorporated Bella into that baby's name. So
Wow.
it's just powerful to see
It is.
how just caring genuinely and showing them kindness and loving them will allow us the privilege of having relationship with them.
Parenting classes now
Yeah.
one-on-one, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Just connecting them to resources in the
right,
community,
in the community.
including the churches that say,
Yeah.
hey, we have this we could offer. We had a church offer an entire nursery to one of our patients and equip her because she was from out of town and had to settle here. So we see the whole body of Christ moving on behalf of something that breaks God's heart, and we get to respond and watch God move and provide.
And how important is it to work together? You know, so often we think
right.
that I've got to do this by myself, but if we do it together
Yes.
and as a community,
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
and you use that phrase, body of Christ, which is so important for us to understand that we are all part of that.
Oh, yes.
And to work together, how much more healing can we bring about
Oh, my.
to the brokenness that many people share? We have just 2 minutes left of our time together. I'd like to talk also about maybe the other people that come with them or that stay at home. What about
point.
the man? How is he involved? What about maybe the girl's parents or grandparents? Is there any support there, or what's their involvement?
Well, we have the front desk. We have a family advocate now that sits at the front desk to interact with whoever does come with her, because they've got needs too. They're in the midst of this whole swirling crisis also. But speak to that a little bit. You've had so much interaction.
We've had, if anyone you can think of that would be related or impacting this woman's choice has walked through the door with her, whether it's a sister or a friend or the father of the baby or a father or mother of the patient, or, you know, so basically we take the time to educate the person who's walked in the door as well while the patient's being served, so that when they walk out the door, they both have the same information. And again, it's about education and information. So yes, we want to meet their needs as best we can too. And a lot of times we do use the resources and referrals of the love of the community, of programs that are already present, to make not only connections for the patient, but for the family. Like I'm thinking of one gentleman who walked in and didn't have his GED, and we got to use a beautiful resource that helped them along in life for their circumstances. So always looking for new resources and referrals that we can connect into.
We're Julie Silker and Tia Ciferno. We thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Give us a phone number or something that folks who are with us want to contact before we close.
Yes, the patient phone number is 855-55-BELLA, right? Correct. 855-55-BELLA. And there's a website also, bellateam.com for donors and bellawomencenter.com for patients.
And we'll put those up on our screen for the folks that are with us. And we thank you for being here. We're sorry that the time went so quickly.
It did.
Maybe
It
we'll
did.
have you back again. But
We
God
loved
bless
it.
you
Thank
for your work.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
Spotlight has been a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Corda.
33 million Americans have descended into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.